Welcome to Accelerate Your Dental Practice, the show for dental professionals ready to grow smarter, faster, and stronger. Hosted by Michelle Affinato of Affinity Management Consulting and Malika Azargun of Czar Dental Consulting. Each episode delivers practical strategies and expert advice to help you streamline operations, increase profitability, and reduce stress. Let's get started.
We are so excited to be here today. And I have the honor of introducing our guest today, Dr. John Vargas. For those of you that work with me, you know that I talk about him all the time to you guys, and I joke with him about how he's like my little comparison that I do when talking to my practice owners. And Dr. Vargas is practice owner of two practices, one in Westchester, New York, and one in Manhattan off of Madison Square. And he has figured out how to, what I say, work-life balance. We all are trying to figure that out. So I'm excited to have him here. Me and Michelle would like to, talk to him, kind of, what I say, pick his brain and see how he makes this work. And I'm sure for our listeners, you guys are eager to know how he's figured this out to, be a practice business owner of two locations at the same time, have some fun. Thank you, Dr. Vargas, for being here.
Well, thank you guys, Malika and Michelle, for having me. That's a very nice introduction. I don't have it figured out, but thanks for making it sound like I do. And I know you guys are experts in your field, so I'm very honored to have been asked to come as a guest, and hopefully I can help.
Of course. I think one of the questions I want to start off with is that obviously you have two practices, but at the same time you don't work 5-6 days a week. And what we see a lot right now with newer practice owners that are coming out, not that coming out of dental school, but they're associates for a couple of years and then they end up owning a practice. They think that they need to work 5-6 days a week in order to survive. And I would love from your lens to share a bit about how you have, figure out a way to have that balance, be still productive as a dentist and still have it, successful practices and, be able to provide to your staff. Because a lot of times I hear the question, well, if I work 3 days or if I work 2 days, what happens to my staff? Do I still need the same number of staff? Because even if my associate or my partner's here, it just doesn't add up. So I would love from your end to kind of share a little bit about just that whole, your weekly schedule and how you make this all work.
Okay. So you're right. I have two practices. One is in Westchester, New York, and the other practice is in Manhattan. I'm a partner in both. I'm the majority partner in both. The one in Chappaqua, that is a 6-operatory practice, and the one in Manhattan is a 9-operatory practice. And actually, the Manhattan one is almost like having 3 practices in one in a city. And the balancing act is real and it's constant. But I think that, and there's so many things that come into play when trying to optimize and make your time efficient. I think that there's definitely a distinction between clinical chair time versus CEO time, right? I think clinical chair time, 5 days a week, plus managing, plus all, I think that is a quick recipe for burnout, because if you're 5 days in the chair, that leaves you no time to be CEO, and it leaves you no time to creatively work out or hammer out any problems, right? I think you end up not only doing 40 hours a week of clinical chair time, but you add in the 20 hours or 30 hours of CEO time, and that's just like unattainable, right? So, I think that, what I currently do right now is I split my time between both offices, and, it's almost like 2 days a week in each office, right? Although I'll still go in. So like Mondays and Wednesdays, I'll be in my city office. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm in my Chappaqua office. And those are mostly clinical days for right now, with mixed, maybe peppered in some CEO time. So like we block time for meetings during those times, during the clinical chair time. But Fridays for both offices, I don't necessarily have to be there, but I try to reserve those for just like CEO and management time, maybe meetings with the higher ups in the office just kind of reviewing numbers of the week, goals for the week, goals for the next month, implement some ideas, hammer out any problems, and I'll try to leave those for Friday. I'll only see patients Friday that are like a really big case, but I'll try to make that as a rule to the staff. We make rules of who can come in, and be seen as a clinical on Friday. Because I really try to protect that Friday. Because Friday, when it's CEO time, it's also kind of like you're able just to kind of like rest and chill and do the creative business stuff and devote that attention to the business itself, where you actually put on the CEO hat, because it's too hard to be the CEO while doing dentistry. You can't devote that time. You're just constantly reactive. You're just putting out fires versus being proactive and implementing plans and that sort of thing, right? I think maybe step one that I try to do is make definitive rules, not only to the staff, but to myself, as what's allowed on certain days, or what's allowed, what am I allowed to do and what are my absolute no's. Like if I'm not going to like re-cement a crown on a Friday, I'm not going to do a filling on a Friday. You know what I mean? I'm going to reserve and be honest and reserve that time and be protective of that CEO time. So I try to split between the two, and I think another a big component of that is just being true and honest and really sticking up for your protected times. You have to protect your time. Like, how you block schedule, right? For maybe new patients, maybe you block schedule for, productive appointments so that one day doesn't become all inserts or something like that. But I think it's really important to do the same when it comes to CEO and when it comes to managing your business. Because if you don't dedicate the time to that, the business will manage you. It's kind of like going to the gym. If you don't dedicate and make going to the gym a priority, like a scheduled priority, you'll never go. You just won't go. So I think setting your own rules, like in your own head, and abiding by them, I think is definitely like step one. Like, figure out what are your absolute no's. When are you going to see what type of patient, and when are you going to really set aside time to run the business? When are you going to set aside time to think about, all right, well, let's review this year and figure out, what are some steps to, increase productivity. You can't do that when you're in 5 minutes in between patients. So, that's one thing. And obviously you can't do this. I think the second biggest thing, I don't think this is any new information. Like, you can't do that without the right people on board. You have to delegate. You have to grab help. Whether that is help from inside your office or whether that's outside help, because there's no way you're going to do this on your own. You can, but then you have nothing left in the tank, So when you get home and you're doing this all by yourself, you're just like a blob of.
Say something, because I love the fact that your comparison is CEO time and clinical time. I think that's a great way for mindset for practice owners, especially the newer ones that come in. Because I think
Yeah.
I'm sure because Michelle also does a lot of startups. I think their mindset is that they just have to grind, like they just have to produce, and then then in staff turnover obviously happens no matter what. But I also feel that staff turnover is even higher when the practice owner is disconnected or just so
Oh
burnt
yeah.
out, where because your team, as you said it beautifully, your team is what helps you get where you are, so that you can get home and be a great husband, be a great father, whatever, or have me time to go for a walk, a run, gym, whatever it may be. But as you said, really funny, like you're a blob of skin if you've done it all yourself, you know
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I think that's really important to realize, because I think people just think that, I'm not going to delegate that because they're not going to do it as perfect as I am going to do it. And I think that's any business owner's, shortfalling. I mean, I used to be that way for a long time, where I was like, no, I don't want to hire anybody. I don't want to have anybody. But I quickly learned that if I don't have it, number one, I'm not going to grow. And
Yeah.
then number two, I'm not going to be a good person after 5 p.m. I'm just like, I'm going to be numb. Like, it's going to be bad.
It's
And I
gonna
think, yeah, and I think Michelle, I'm sure Michelle does more startups than I do. And I'm sure Michelle sees that even more than I do, that like the newer CEOs, like the ones just started, they're so green. They quickly think that they just have to work, 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 work. And that culture is not created in the office. So then they're like, oh, I lost 3 employees already the first year of practice ownership. And I'm sure Michelle can chime on this, but a lot of times I say, like, look within first. Ask yourself, did you do everything you can do to set this person for success? Because we're quick to point fingers at whoever is in front of us, and I think you said it perfectly, that delegation is key, but at the same time, having CEO time to block out to work with your team so that your team knows what you're expecting from them.
right. And your team is going to want to work with someone whom they trust, they feel they're growing with, they're part of a team. They're just not, they just, oh, he pays my salary, so I have to do this. This doesn't work like that. I think that you have to, it's kind of counterintuitive. Like you feel like you have to do it on your own, and then you feel like only you can do it. But it's like you have to actually delegate more, right? But in order to delegate more, you have to have the right people, right? That means you have to try and hire right. And then it's not only that, but you have to keep them, you got to keep them. But, it's really, I think you said it, and it's culture. I think the key to a practice, like a good, healthy practice, one, it's all about the culture. Who wants to go to a place even if they're getting paid a little bit more, but the culture is horrific, right? If you're going to a place where you're not appreciated, where the owner doesn't talk to you, he just comes in or she comes in and just goes into the office, closes the door, and all they're doing is yelling. And then they go to the patient, and there's no interaction between the owner and the staff, and then they just leave. And it's like that day in, day out. Well, who wants to work like that? So who wants to have a culture like that? A culture where there's no one being appreciated. There's no way you're going to delegate to those people, unless you're paying them, lots of money. And guess what? They're going to leave for someone else who's going to pay them more money. Everyone who asks me, hey, what's really number one? I'm like, you gotta get that culture right. Without a culture, you really have nothing. You don't have a lot to stand on except money. So you really have to, as a leader, I think that's really important. Like becoming a good dentist or a good dental owner isn't just knowing all the clinical, but it's knowing how to communicate, knowing how to be a leader, knowing how to be a team player, and learning how to put the ego aside, because your ego is what's going to get you in trouble. So I think in both practices, I try my hardest to, with every new hire, with everybody, I say, look, no matter what position you are at, we're all the same. If you're assistant, you're my colleague. If you're front office, you're my colleague. Not like I'm your boss, I'm going to tell you what to do, even though sometimes that's what happens. But I think it's that mentality that stems from the top. It's going to set the tone for the culture. If the culture is good, you're going to have people that trust you. You're going to have lower turnover. You're going to have people that are going to want to work that extra mile a little bit. You know what I mean? They're going to feel good about coming to work. If you don't have that culture, you don't have shit. I'm just going to tell you right now. Protect the culture, because that is how, honestly, if you have good culture, you can walk away from the practice and know that people are watching out for you because they feel that you're watching out for them.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true.
And then from there, you can really start branching out, like getting outside sources like you guys, stuff that my staff can't do. But I think without the culture, without the core in the office, you're not going to delegate anything. you're going to be untrustworthy. You're going to, oh, no one can do this. I have to do it myself. And guess what? They're going to feel that too. Now you have disempowered them. Why are they going to work when they feel like you're just going to take it away from them anyway? And I learned that the hard way.
Unfortunately, I think that's what happens in dentistry, right? Is like, because when you go to school, right, you learn how to be a great clinician. You don't learn all of this stuff. So a
Yes.
lot of doctors are learning the hard way, to do this. And I have a few doctors now, like they're not finding the right people. So they're having to do all of this stuff and they're dying. They're like, half of them want to give up doing dentistry or owning a practice because they're just like, I can't figure this out. I have a couple of spouses who will contact me like, why is she still at the office at 10 o'clock at night? Why is she there every weekend? And I'm like, well, right, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it.
It's
How
true.
did you come to this realization, and how long did it like take you for that like light bulb to go on for this?
I think a lot of it stems from, and Malika can attest to this. I think it was just being in a lot of just different offices when I was younger. My parents were also physicians. I guess they're entrepreneurs because they had their own practices. And I think I just saw, at least from them innately, like, if you treat your staff with equal respect, it's going to work out for you. So, and then after dental school, working in a lot of just different offices, Malika was actually the manager of one of them. I think that you learn a lot. You learn, like, mostly probably what not to do. You start to learn that. And then you start to kind of figure out, well, the things that you like about a practice, where you're gonna keep that stored in the back of your back. So I feel like the more practices that you worked at, you get a lot of experience. You get a lot of like what not to do. But from all those experiences, I did learn very quickly it's the culture, and what directly drives culture is how you treat people. So if you generally treat people just like your overall personality, with respect, you know what I mean? You're gonna attract a good culture. If you don't treat people with respect and you have like this ego about yourself, well, you better learn, because it's gonna bite you. You're gonna have people that, maybe in your real life, that don't trust you, people that don't want to hang out with you because you're egotistical, or you talk down to people. I think that in the workplace, when you treat people with respect, just like as you would at home with your friends, you're going to attract people that want to help you. You know what I mean? You're going to want to attract people that want to help you because they feel like you're helping them as well. So, it's hard for me to answer, but if you ask me, well, how did you get a good culture? I don't know. I think it's my personality.
It helps. It helps.
It helps. It helps a lot. I think it really helps. And I think maybe along the years, I think probably the biggest thing that, helped me was just really keeping the ego in check. Trying to get that whole like doctor mentality. Well, I'm the big man, so you're gonna follow me. You're gonna do what I say. I think ego is a big problem.
Do you feel that, because I just know your routine, do you feel that your routine of, for example, having an outlet like your gym in the morning, coming in, do you feel that helps the process? Because then, you have a routine, you come in, you're so fresh, your energy's in a good place. Do you feel like that outlet helps you in that process?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like without without the gym, without like the me time, whatever it is, whether it's meditation, whether it's reading, without just the personal, this is just for me, especially early in the morning, you know, before everything starts, maybe before the kids get up, it just hits the reset. It allows you just to kind of decompress and chill. Look, you're probably obviously thinking about the business a lot, you know, but it's all about you. It's just you. That routine, I think just doing it day in, day out it's a huge help. And then also, so like that's kind of like opening the day, right? But then coming back from a crazy day is learning how to shut it off. That's probably bigger.
Yeah.
That's probably bigger. And I would attribute that to my wife. My wife is really good at like, what are you doing? You're just staring out into space. Come back to us, you know? And this is like over years. This is not like, oh, I just learned to do it. Like this has been in the making. Just learning how when you get home, you just turn it off. It'll be there tomorrow. The good stuff and the bad. If you're at home, let's just pay attention, turn off the phone, set it aside, just hang out with the kids, hang out with your spouse, just turn it off, and even to this day, it's still hard, it's still hard. Like you want it, that phone, that email, that information is still crawling at you to pick it up, you know. But my wife is like, put that phone in the drawer and don't open it.
I know, he's talking to me sometimes. He's like, I gotta go. I'm home now. I can't talk to you anymore. Click.
Exactly.
I love
But
that for you, though. I
it's
need to
good.
learn that for myself.
It's really hard because you feel like you're gonna miss out. You want the edge. You gotta be, but you really don't. You don't. You can just turn it off. You can just, if you just put your phone on silent or just put it in the cabinet, and every time you walk by, you can open it and see if there's an emergency call. But what really truly needs your attention? What needs your attention is your family, your own obligations at home, because guess what? You have to attend to those also, So everything needs a priority. But I think everything, you need to be constantly reminded of that because it's easy to fall off the tracks, So at home, I have a really good reminder. Her name is Brooke.
Everybody needs a Brooke in their life.
Yeah.
Everybody needs their Brooke. I would actually attribute, I mean, Malika knows her. She's got a really good, like, sense of, like, what's true and, like, what is kind of, like, naturally, like, you should be doing. Like, even in the car, she's like, you should probably just put your phone down and stare out the window. Just think and just let it, And sometimes you're just like, what are you talking? And then when you put it down, you're like, oh, wait, I have an idea, you know? And then all of a sudden your brain actually has the time to actually be creative and learn and figure out solutions. That's why Malika sometimes gets text at 5:30 in the morning and I have to calm myself down. I'm like, oh, I just thought of something. You know what I mean? But I think, yes, I think turning it off is just as important as that routine. I would actually say that is part of the routine, you know? Not only have your gym, whatever it is, your you time in the morning, but learning when to shut it off, which is super hard. It's super hard. Everything I think in your day has to be so regimented in order to prevent this burnout. Otherwise, if you have no rules set for yourself, guess what? The business takes over, right? All of a sudden, you don't know what's going on with the kids. You come home, you're still thinking about the business, and your spouse is like, hello, where are you? And that over years, that's bad. Not only you burnt out, but you don't know your family, you don't know your kids. So I think that it is worth it to put these self restrictions and these self imposed rules in place, because it helps. It helps. I mean, I don't claim to not be burnt out. I get burnt out too, but I think if I didn't have these rules, I'd be dead.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important.
And I love this because I hear complaints from team members a lot that, just like you said, Malika gets the text at 5 in the morning. Like I get those two, or even late at night, I'll get them. I'll wake up in the morning and there's a whole bunch. But doctors do it to their team too. And I
Mhm.
think that's extremely frustrating to them. Like,
Yes.
they want to go home and turn it off and be with their family
Yes.
as well. And I know we want them to be engaged in the practice and be motivated to do things, but like they need that break as well, because they're going to burn out too, and they're going to get frustrated, and they're going to go look for a job where like the doctor maybe doesn't care as much and is not going to bother them after hours.
Right. That's exactly right. You got to treat the people who work with you with the same amount of respect that you would treat yourself. If you don't want these calls, guess what? They don't want these calls either. But you set the rules, you set the expectations, and you try not to offend those rules. Like, I'm not going to shoot you an email at 3 in the morning and expect you to answer me at 6. Of course, I mean, that's ridiculous. So you got to treat not only yourself and obviously your family with that sense of priority, that sense of respect, but you have to treat your team like that too. And if you offend it, you acknowledge it so that they know that it was wrong. But that helps with this whole sense of culture. Again, if you go have this good sense of culture, you can delegate. You know what I mean? And if you can delegate, now you have more time. If you have more time, you have less chance of burning out. You know what I mean? So I think in a nutshell, that helps with the burnout. I mean, there's so many other things, but this whole setting the priorities, setting rules for your time, culture, I think those are very simple rules that you can live by that help.
And I think with the generation, we're offices are hiring more Gen Zs, and I joke and say they know how to do work life balance better than all of us.
Gen X does not at all.
Yeah, they prefer to make less money. I feel like, but meaning like work less days, but have their me time. And as we evolve and we continue to hire these younger generations, I think more than anything that boundary has to be clear. Because the minute a dentist texts us at 8, 9, 10 p.m. constantly, then what happens? He or she's going to be like, I'm out.
Yeah,
I don't need
unfortunately,
this.
yes. Right.
Where I joke and say my parents raised me to respect. If I'm working for somebody, I'm going to give my 110%, and I'll work, 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 work. Where I feel like the younger generation won't take it.
No.
We just won't do it.
Unless that younger generation person feels that the place they're going to isn't a place just for money, but it's a place where they have ownership or where they have growth.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Now it's shifted. Like, oh, this is not a place of work. This is actually, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm actually better because I came to work. I feel good when I go to work because, yeah, I'm getting a paycheck, but I'm respected. I can grow here. Then you can start to kind of then it's not just a transactional relationship anymore. I think that's the key, which is so hard because what motivates people in our generation now, it's different for the next generation.
Yeah.
But I think that if there's a sense of growth, there's a sense of ownership, even though there is no ownership, but there's a sense of belonging. You know what I mean? Like I belong here. This is where I want to be. I think that there tends to be a shift in the mentality of working hard, because I have a lot of people in that generation and they are workhorses.
Yeah.
They are workhorses.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll work past their allotted time, right? And it's not just I'm out of here, but it's I got to finish this up because this patient needs this tomorrow, and I think that I think is hard to get, have someone believe in something that you're building, but maybe they feel, I think making them feel because it's true that they've helped build it with you. I think
they're part of it.
They're part of it. But without them, it wouldn't be like this. And I think it's those daily communications, the appreciation. Hey, whatever you did today, it's amazing. Taking that time just to say it, because I think as business owners, we don't say it often. Maybe we feel that it doesn't mean anything, or maybe we're just too busy and we're stuck in our own brains to say that. So I think that sending those small little notes of recognition, and gratitude, I think that does go a long way.
And I think investing in them, I hear a lot from doctors I just have somebody who's here for a paycheck. One, I think that starts at the interview process.
Yeah.
Finding the right person, asking the right questions. But I also believe, and I'm really big on this right now, is the onboarding process. You can't just give them 5 minutes of training. You have to invest and take the time, and it doesn't matter the position, front office, assistant, hygienist, right? You've got to get them to understand the way you do things in the office. Give them the proper training so that you're setting them up for success versus, hey, you have 10 years of experience. You should know what to do. Go sit over there. They'll show
Right.
you like how to log in, right? And that's what I feel like happens a lot of the time. So now you have somebody that's there and they're not fully committed because you didn't commit to them when you brought them on.
Exactly. Exactly. And they're just going to be like, if you're not committed to them, just like what you said, Michelle, they're thinking in their head, they're like, wow, I can't wait till the day's over and collect my paycheck. They're not going to be committed to you. You didn't show them, or you didn't give them a reason for them to kind of go the extra mile or work to impress you. You know what I mean? You didn't give them any reason. So you're right. Commit to them. Put the ball in their court by passing them the ball.
Right. It's less expensive to invest in your current team than it is to keep hiring people over and over again.
God, that's the worst. That is like the most expensive.
Ugh.
Just finding someone. I mean, look, finding somebody new is part of being the business, right? It's part of being a business owner. But when you're trying to find somebody new every month or every 3 months, I mean, talk about burnout,
Such an energy suck.
for your whole team, for your whole staff. You know what I mean? They get to the point where like, we don't want to hire anybody else because all they do is leave. After we've spent all this time training them on our practice management software that we don't even know how to use either.
It's a whole other podcast episode.
But yeah, that's a quick way, to burn out. Like, yeah, learn how to communicate. If you're a dentist, learn how to communicate, learn how to express, learn how to convey gratitude and appreciation, learn how to talk to somebody when you're mad at them, but in a cordial way that doesn't demean them. Everything has to be constructive all the time, not destructive, But I mean, that's probably hard to do because you're running late. You've got 3 patients that are already mad at you. Someone did something wrong. It's hard to have the self-control to take a step back and just say, and then all of a sudden slow it down and try to reprimand a staff member without reprimanding them, in public. Like, that's a skill. That's a hardcore skill to learn how to do that.
And it makes a huge difference too. That energy that in that office, I always joke and say when I go in a potential new office just to like check in and observe, I can already feel that energy when I walk in. I already know what's pretty much from the way the front desk greets me. I can just connect the dots from there on. I mean, literally, I always say, and I'm just, as someone, a consultant potentially coming in to observe, imagine how those patients feel when they walk in, because if your team doesn't have a buy-in, they're not going to make the new patient walking through the door feel welcome. Even if they're going to be fake about it, honestly. It's not, it's like, I joke and say, it's like walking into a house when you're invited to a dinner party and the couple had a huge fight right before you walked in and they're trying to act like everything's normal, but you can totally tell they're not talking to each other.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can tell. Yeah.
They're just looking at each other like,
yeah. Before we wrap up, one thing I want to ask you, because I think it's important for the listeners to hear, is that you do a good job with taking time off. Like, I personally tell my clients, like, every quarter you should technically take a week off. That's like my recipe, because I think that disconnect from the office, from the clinical and the CEO part, it's important to be able to come back recharged, refreshed. And I know that you have a good recipe how you do that. Like, how much time do you usually take off, and what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so it's funny, the reason. So again, my life consultant by the name of Brooke, my spouse, she's a big proponent of like the whole me time, right? So, a funny story. So I remember we've been going on vacation, and I was a brand new practice owner, maybe 2 years in, and we were taking a week off, and I think we were in St. John at the time, which has now become our annual February retreat. But it was like a week, and she's like, why aren't we staying here longer? I was like, because I can't. The office is going to fail without me. She's like, why not? I'm like, oh, no. She said, well, just do things that you got to do so you can leave longer, right? I was like, huh, maybe that makes sense. So, the following year, leading up to it, I just made like, I don't know. I think, again, it was probably delegation. So I made like checklists. I made everything that I wanted to be done as far as, and at this time, I didn't have any partners or associates. It was just me by myself. So it was, if I'm not there, well, guess what? There's no income coming in. But if when she was like, well, just let's try and do 10 days and let's see what happens. So next year comes, we do 10 days, but obviously I've made some, like I was a little bit more specific with the staff. I said, hey, when I'm gone, this, and this, and this, can we handle that? Hey, great. Lo and behold, we go 10 days and our production was higher. I was like, maybe you do know something about this whole, okay. So then she's like, why are we just doing this 10 days? We need to do 2 weeks. I was like, maybe if I put some more rules in place. So lo and behold, 2 weeks goes by. Office was just fine. And again, I'm still by myself, right? So planning ahead, a month or two helped a whole lot. And lo and behold, 2 weeks, production is up again. So then as time went on, I just learned that planning, maybe being more obviously those years you become efficient now with dentistry. So you're just growing anyway. But I think it's the mental thought of if I'm gone, everything's going to fall apart. No, it doesn't. It might even get better when you're away. It might even be better because now if you give the people, your staff, the confidence and empower them to be like, hey, look, you make the decisions. You've been doing this for a while. These are my rules for like absolute no's, and then you can figure out the rest. Guess what? They do a pretty good job, especially if you have that good culture, right? So then 2 weeks became 2 weeks in the winter, 2 weeks in the summer. All of a sudden it was 4 weeks in the summer, 2 weeks in the winter, 2 weeks at Christmas. And now these are with partners now and associates. But I think that, but see, every time we came back from vacation, I was just that much more energized. I was that much more productive. I was better for everybody else. It almost made sense because when I was away, we actually were fine and we did well. You know what I mean? I wasn't burnt out. I needed that time. And I think that would I have done it if it was just me? No. Again, my life coach was like, you need to do this, Brooke, my wife, but it ended up being okay. I didn't leave just willy-nilly. I mean, I left and I set up plans, some rules for them to follow because I just figured out, all right, what is the most things that they need to follow in order for this ship to stay afloat when I'm gone? And they follow those and they filled in the rest. I just gave them the big points and it's just become, I think I've been doing that now for, I don't know, 10 years or something. And it just works. It just ends up working. But again, it comes down to team, culture, delegation, mutual respect, and then having those internal rules set for yourself that allow you, that give you yourself permission to take this time. Because I think every new doctor or practice owner has this fear that if you take time off, everything's going to fall apart. Everything's going to fall apart. You're not going to make payroll. No one can do it better than me, so I better come home and take care of it. But that's not the case. When you empower the right people, they actually sometimes do it better than you. And that I think is so empowering because you're like, wow, I don't have to now think about that. I can think about this, so it becomes like a synergistic effect. But that's constantly ongoing, learning who is in the right spot, learning what person has, can't do this, but this person can do this, and figuring out yourself, like, what are the 5 most important things that I need to tell my staff when I'm gone? I think it's ongoing. I think it's just a constant fluid, with regarding rules and expectations. But I think it's the mental the mental rule that you have of being like, I'm going to delegate this. I don't have to do this all myself. I think that's rule number one. Like if you feel like you have to do it on your own, then it's hopeless. You have to get over that.
I think
Malika, I've been thinking. I think we need to have this life coach on our podcast.
have work in our life.
I'm telling you, it's like every night. Every night, she's like, "Get off the computer unless we're looking at vacation. Unless we're looking at vacations for our family, you're not allowed to go on." You know what? You know what it was this summer? She said, "Okay, so I'm like a big fan like of nonfiction like business books, nonfiction podcasts, but like business podcasts." And my son like saw some of my podcasts and he was like, "Oh, my books," and he was like laughing at me, like Cash Flow Ninja. What is that? You know? So Brooke this summer, she was like, you gotta let your brain relax. You're always thinking. My challenge to you is you have to read 3 fiction books by the end of the summer. And my son, who's an avid reader, he was like laughing. He's like, first of all, Dad, I read 11 in the summer. And he's like, I've seen your books. They are not fiction. And she was like, yes, you have to read fiction. I'm like, why do I have to read fiction? She goes, because you have to let your brain just relax and let it be free. Because if you let it be free, it's training it how to become creative. You're just relaxing. When you're relaxing, you can actually be creative again. When you're creative, you can problem solve, which is really what life's all about, right? Problem solving, right? So that was her new rule, her challenge for me this summer. And guess what? I read 4.
What'd you read? What did you read?
Well, one of them was her book. She's an author.
Okay.
Right? The other one was, I forgot the name because I never remember the names. One was the Bill Clinton. He has a partnership with what's the name of that author? Like that mystery novel author. The other 2, I already forgot. They were that
Does Bill
good.
Clinton do James Patterson?
Oh, Patterson.
Patterson, yeah.
Yeah. And the other first 2, I don't remember the names.
What's your wife's book? Because I know she writes a lot of books. What was the book from your wife that you read?
Our Last Vineyard Summer. Right, because she like writes a lot of historical fiction, mostly based upon like the New England beach scene, like whether it's the Hamptons, the Vineyards, or Nantucket. The last one was Our Last Vineyard Summer, and it deals with I think in the 70s, and it's about sisters, and the relationships about family. So I don't read that stuff. So the fact I got out, she made me get out of my comfort zone, but not one, but read 3. That was the challenge. That it really helped. It really helped. It gave me another reason why I wasn't burning out. Because I don't think you could see burnout. Burnout creeps up on you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So anyway.
So you might, after everyone listens to this podcast, there might be people reaching out to you, not to talk to you, but they want Dr. Brooke.
Yeah, they want Brooke.
They all want Brooke.
But we will put the book in the show notes to give her a little plug, a little publicity there.
Please. That would be amazing. But yeah, I think this is a great subject because I think, especially now that I think a lot of people who feel that they're burning out, there's no answer except to sell, to like a PE company or private equity, when really you're just trading one stress for another stress, And I think a lot of younger people, like people who are in like their 30s to 40s, like feel like that's the answer, but that isn't the answer. And rarely have I found anyone actually that likes their deal, especially now. I feel like everyone wants to get out of their deal. But I think like by you guys addressing this issue of burnout, I think that's huge because they've been given a gift, right? That is, not only are they dentists, like not many people are dentists, right? It's hard to get in. It's very select few. So you always have a need for dentists, but they have this other added, right, gift of being your own boss, right? Of being in control of your whole life. You can't be fired from your own office. But I think that a lot of dentists feel that it's greener on the other side. Oh my God, if I sell, I'll get rid of all my problems. Guess what? You've just sold, and now you have a whole host of new problems. And you actually may be more stressed now that you sold and now work for, a big PE private equity company versus being in control of your stress and be like, all right, well, at least I can control who I hire. I can control, maybe I can hire Malika or Michelle to help me, and I can still maintain ownership of this gift that I have, So I think it's important for for especially younger practitioners who are feeling like this burnout. Like, the answer isn't to sell. The answer is you can work through it and hold on to this gift. There's a reason why they want your office. There's a reason why they want your business,
And I love that you're saying it as a gift. It truly is a gift. I feel that that's really beautifully said, because truly getting into dental school is a gift. Owning your own practice is another gift, and I think it shouldn't be taken lightly. And there is solutions, and I know you and I talk about this a lot. Selling is, especially when you're young, it's not the answer. You can find ways to, restructure how you run your practice or the team you have. There's good solutions and there's help for it that can get you back on track. And I also think that ownership's not for everybody either. Not everybody can be. There's associates that are very successful, and I'm sure that for the ones that are associates that are listening, if you're like doing really well as an associate, why do you want the headache? Don't. If it's not for you, don't. So I feel some people feel like I have to do it because my friends are doing it. This is not an outfit. This is not a handbag. This is like serious. But I think you couldn't have said it more perfectly. It is a gift. It's definitely a gift.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think that if more people, and they can't because they sign non-disclosures, but if more people spoke about their experience, well, first of all, it's hard to talk about an experience that's very shameful. So you won't hear people talk about it, but they also have non-disclosures. But I don't know anyone, not one person who has sold that likes the fact that they've sold. And if they like it, they haven't told me about it. I just hear about all the bad stuff, because, look, there's no one that's going to treat your patients like you are, and to then feel like, oh, it'll be better off if I sell this thing and have work for somebody else for 5 years. Oh, the life is going to be gravy. No, it ain't. No, it ain't. You have the power now, while you have control of everything, to make it the way you want it to. As soon as you relinquish that control, you don't have it anymore. I think most people end up trying to find their own again, right? After they've sold, they're like, this sucks. I got to find my own. And now they're starting all over again.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Vargas. This was so great. Despite the fact that I've known you for so many years, I even learned a couple of things today. See,
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. It was awesome. It was so fun. I love talking about this stuff because I feel like, people are always talking about, well, I'm going to own 4 practices, and as soon as I hit 33, I'm going to sell. I'm like, who told you that? But anyway, I think it's good. This is how it should be.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We should do it again.
Definitely.
We need to have an episode 2 for sure. There's more to talk about.
I'll bring Brooke next time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you should.
She'll be like, I did not say that.
I'm gonna make sure she listens to this one.
Oh my.
Until next time, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Accelerate Your Dental Practice. To learn more about your hosts and explore consulting services tailored to your practice, visit affinitymanagement.co for Michelle Afato and zardentalconsulting.com for Malika Azargun. Be sure to follow, rate, and share the podcast. And join us next time for more tools, tips, and strategies to help you accelerate your dental practice.